frequency versus wavelength.
Miss Sarah, are you calling me?
I did say Sharon, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. So frequency is the number of wavelengths past a given point per second.
Correct.
And wavelength is the distance from one peak to another.
Perfect. Thank you. You did it beautiful. So this is the wavelength. Either we're going to have it from crest or peak to another peak. This is how you go back and you measure a wavelength. So we can see the red wave has a longer wavelength than compared to the green. Now, a frequency is you're taking an entire wave. So you're going from from trough, or you can even start at crest, go down to the valley or trough, back up to the crest. You're taking one entire sine wave. How many times do you have this repetition in a given amount of time? All of these frequencies were delivered in one set time frame. So the unit of measure for that is time is seconds. So whether this was 1 second or whether this was 5 seconds, we can see which one has the highest frequency.
The one in the bottom.
The purple, violet color, right? Asias, which one has the lowest frequency?
Red one.
The red one. Daniel, I want you to tell me which one has the shortest wavelength.
Is it the red one?
Okay, think about it. If I were going to take a ruler from here to here, or from here to here, which one would have a shorter distance or longer? Okay, I'm going shorter distance.
Shorter would be the purple one.
Good. Longer one would be
the red one.
Good. All right. Perfect. So long distance, that is a larger wavelength. Shorter distance, it is a smaller wavelength. Make sense? You're going to have questions like this on your examination. We are spending time on this material so that you understand it. Joanne, which one has the highest energy wavelength? Which is the highest energy?
The purple one?
The purple one has the highest energy because the more frequency or the shorter the wavelength means a higher energy. So which one is likely, let me move on. Jalisha, which one of these is likely to become absorbed? Photoelectric effect.
The purple one?
Think about it. If the purple one has higher energy,
the red one.
What have we been saying all along? Right. So the lower the energy, the more likely it's going to be absorbed. Do you see how I created 6 questions? 6 questions on just this picture alone. Does everyone understand where I'm going with this? Because I can reference frequency, I can reference wavelength, I can reference energy, I can reference Compton and photoelectric effect for transmission. Jessley, which one is likely the wavelength that will have more transmission?
The purple?
The purple one. Perfect. Good. And this is what we're tying in. All the words that we have been learning are tying in. So what happens to these middle ones, John? The ones that vary.
They're either going to get absorbed or scattered.
Scattered, likely, right? Maybe transmitted. It's going to depend on what 4 factors. Start with number 1, Javier. What is going to be a factor if these wavelengths make it to the image receptor or become part of remnant radiation?
Tissue mass, tissue density.
May I ask the question?
I'm sorry, Javier?
I didn't. Could you ask the question again?
I said, which one? I go, what is number one of the four factors that are going to affect this becoming transmission, photoelectric absorption, or Compton scatter? What factors could
Be like the
sorry?
thickness? Would it be thickness?
Tissue thickness is one of them. Good job. Billy, give me another one.
Atomic number.
Absolutely. The more electrons that surround that nucleus, more likely, if you put more electrons in the mix, likely going to have some type of interactions. Perfect. Wani, give me another one.
The quality.
The quality of the beam. Which wave is likely to reach the image receptor? Beautiful. Last one, Luke.
Density?
Tissue density. Now, using the word density is going to come with consequences. That is one word that is going to be used in different variations. So make sure that we say tissue density. Okay? Tissue density. Perfect. Good job. You guys, so with that, you have won a reward. Fun fact. When you look at these colors, what does it remind you of?
The electromagnetic.
You said it, Marisela. Say it out loud.
Visible light.
A rainbow.
Rainbow. And so we know that the frequencies of all of these different colors travel differently. So when you think of the rainbow, you think of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, which are all the colors of the rainbow. Roy G. Biv. It also demonstrates which one has the highest frequency. So colors traveling, bouncing off the landscape, travel at different frequencies. So a rainbow is pretty. However, how is a rainbow created where light is traveling at a constant speed? However, the colors of the wavelengths are traveling at different speeds. And so you're able to determine or specify the colors by their frequency. Pretty interesting. So you look at a rainbow again, you're looking at frequencies, not necessarily colors, right? Well, why do you think I introduced this? Why do I say, what do I care about a rainbow and PRE? Is this just to take a little fun fact break? Possibly. Why do I think about, why am I even introducing this? Why do I care about frequencies and wavelengths and X-ray?
How fast it's going to the image receptor whenever we're doing an X-ray?
Absolutely, because we know that all these different frequencies are going to affect our remnant radiation. So when we're thinking about our remnant radiation or exit radiation, we know that we started out from the source. We had a primary beam, interacted with matter in different forms, right? The remnant radiation, which is composed of what? Ruth, what does it say? Ruth?
It's composed of scattering and transmission.
Good. And what are the three things that we need for differential absorption?
We need scattering, transmission, and absorption.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So absorption can't be a part of the remnant radiation because it got lost. It got absorbed in here. Now, we know fog is caused by what, Pamela? Fog is caused by what?
By the
Compton scatter. So we know that once this, now we had this conversation before. Why does Compton scattered photons not produce anatomy? Can anyone explain that to me?
Isn't it because scatter, it like just touches the electron, but it does not really move the electron out of the balance? Out of the
What is that? Are you saying Compton is non-ionizing?
No.
Compton is ionizing. Remember the outer or middle shell?
It is. I'm confused.
It's okay. You're thinking of coherent temporarily. Coherent or classical or Thomson scatter does not ionize, but Compton does. But why is fog not useful?
Because it you can't see it, like the clear picture of it. It just looks foggy.
Really? Okay, I see where you're going with that, Justly. But there is an explanation. If you take a look at the diagram and you incorporate everything that we just talked about, tissue density absorbing X-rays at a different rate, tissue thickness absorbing X-rays at a different, or attenuating X-rays at a different rate, atomic number of the tissue attenuating X-rays at a different rate. So tell me, why does Compton not provide useful information? I know someone's got to know. Maricela, say it out loud, please.
Because the scatter photon hits the IR where it's not directed.
Perfect. So if this was tissue that was going to attenuate this energy different, if this photon was attenuated differently, saying it ran into a tumor versus a lung, it is going to project or give a certain energy difference as opposed to the surrounding tissue. But if it gets displaced on another part of the image receptor, it is no longer representing the anatomy, attenuation, absorption of that anatomy. It's not representing it on the image. Does everyone understand that? I see a lot of blank stares. You're not convincing me if you understand it. Okay, I'll put that on the test. Maybe we'll do an essay. So when we look at the areas within the anatomic tissue that absorb incoming X-ray photons, we know that to be photoelectric effect. We've discussed this over and over and over. We know that we're going to have a white or bright, high bright, increased brightness displayed on the image. So we can go back and we can see where photoelectric absorption took place because of the brightness of that part of the image. If the incoming X-ray photons are transmitted, meaning they didn't lose any energy, we are going to have a decreased brightness. Now, I bolded these because in the digital world, we are living in the digital world. Before, as I was telling Luke, when we had X-ray film, we termed brightness into density, image density. How dark was that image? If it was super dark, our energy was too high. If the image was too light, our energy wasn't sufficient. But in the digital world, the image stays constant. And we're going to learn about that in the next chapter, next semester. The image is going to stay constant. However, we can still underexpose and we can still overexpose. Okay? But the image is not likely to change because we have some computer algorithms that are going to maintain a certain amount of brightness along as it's displayed. So this is when you go back and you start to look at some of those images and you're like, man, it looks beautiful. Wow, I killed it on this technique. we're going to go back and learn how to really evaluate if you were underexposed or overexposed, okay? Because the images do provide the information for that. So, what world are we living in right now?
Digital.
Digital. And in the digital world, we are going to determine our images by brightness. So if we have increased brightness, or what we say in reference to white, we have the photoelectric effect. If we have decreased or low brightness, then we have high energy because it was transmitted X-rays. Low energy, actually zero energy. Why did I say zero, son? Why do I say zero for photoelectric effect? Zero energy. Help them out, Steph.
Were you talking to me? Sorry.
I said son.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Stephanie? Why do I say zero?
I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Who understands my question? Because my question may sound a little...
Can I help? Maybe it's because 0 photons are hitting the IR.
Beautiful, because 0 energy are in the remnant radiation. There is no photoelectric photons. They stayed in the body. That is why it is 0. Great job, Naomi. So, high energy, no energy, okay? Or low, because some of this is going to have a combination. So this is where the biggest confusion starts to come in when we eventually start to talk about contrast. So if you can pick up this definition right now, it will carry you from the rest of the semester. And I know I keep saying that, but PRE is comprehensive. So we know that anatomic tissues are going to vary in the way that they absorb or transmit X-rays. We know that, right? Less tissue thickness, big, increased tissue thickness. Less tissue density, increased tissue density. Less or lower atomic number, here we have a high atomic number. So we know, depending on where the path of that photon is going to lead it through the body, we are going to have a range of dark and light areas. And I underlined and emphasized the word range. We're going to have a range of low brightness and high brightness. Low brightness and high brightness. And we are going to reference that grays or shades of gray. That's the way that they appear on an image. Now remember, we're monochromatic. Black, white, and gray. Black, white, and gray. Okay? So the various shades of gray, I would really, because we started to embark in the digital world of brightness. So the various shades of gray or brightness will display, make anatomic tissue visible. So what if it's not bone? What if it's not air? What if it's in between, like soft tissue fat, soft tissue muscle? We're going to be able to see the differences between muscle and fat through the various shades of brightness. Make sense? Yes? No? Make sense?
I've got a quick question about that. So, the amount of brightness, how bright something is it more so determined on, like say like I have a photon that hits a bone, a piece of bone. It's going to be really bright.
Mm-hmm.
And then it hits that piece, it hits like a piece of fat. It's not going to be as bright.
Okay. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, so
because if it hit air, if it interacted with air when it reached the image receptor, is it excuse me, is it likely to have is that photon likely to have retained all of its energy?
I'm sorry, say that again.
If the photon interacts with air on the image receptor, will that photon likely have retained all of its energy?
Yes.
Good. So the deposit of energy is going to be greater on the image receptor where air is present.
Okay, so
mm-hmm.
I was just trying to make a picture of it. Like, is the amount of brightness, is it determined more so based on so how dense that bone is, and there's so many photons being absorbed in one spot. That's what's making it actually brighter. It's not, or is it more so based on there's a higher energy photon being absorbed there, or is it all of the above?
It's all of the above. It doesn't matter what energy level the photon is. Now, if you take a high atomic number, like let's just take a prosthesis.
Mm-hmm.
John, let's just take a prosthesis. Is there any variation in the color of a prosthesis?
No.
Because the prosthesis was made out of one element.
Right.
Make sense? So there was no variations in that element. So all the photons behaved or interacted with it the same. They absorbed. Wasn't strong enough. Our diagnostic range was not strong enough to allow it to penetrate.
Okay. I got you now.
Okay? So if you go back and think about it, and this is the way that I kind of want to put it. Hold on one second. Okay, and this is kind of opposite of what I want you to understand, but this is the screen inside of the cassettes. So if you open up the cassette, the green cassettes, this is the screen that is inside. And this is where I had said, oh, well, you know what, it's white. So if no photon deposits their energy, it will remain what color?
White.
White. Because nothing was deposited. So if I were going to drop and make a silhouette of paint or sand or whatever it is to create a picture, but there was something that blocked it, it is going to be zero energy that this image receptor is going to read at this section. So when it has zero energy, a number eventually is going to get assigned. That number is going to be a high brightness. And we're getting to that.
Okay.
Okay? So if you think about how you place the image receptor onto the patient, you place it this way, you place it this way, you know what you're expecting to see. You know relatively where the lungs are going to be placed. So you have an idea. So when something creates an anomaly, an abnormality, that's where we start to identify pathology. So I got some examples for you. Did that answer your question, John?
Yes, it does.
Does anybody have a question before we move on? So when we think about our shades of gray or our various brightness levels, what am I looking at right here, Aurora? What is this an X-ray of?
The lumbar?
Okay, I like the lumbar. But what is this around here? What is this whole objective? It's opened the entire way.
The abdomen?
Abdomen. Thank you. So not only do we see skeletal, we're also going to see muscle. We're also going to see air, intestinal air. We're also going to see organs. What we're seeing is how these various forms of these various energy levels, our frequencies, various frequencies and wavelengths of our X-rays are interacting with soft tissue. Now, I picked the abdomen because the abdomen is a collage of tissue and bone. We have bone, but you're looking at it and you're saying, wow, but this is supposed to have photoelectric absorption. Why does this bone appear gray? What is giving us, or why does it have that gray appearance? That's the question on the table. Why does it have a gray appearance?
Because of the density?
What was adjusted to make it appear gray?
Is it the mass?
The what?
The mass?
Mass just basically says how many photons are you putting into battle?
Okay, so would it be that if we decrease the KVP?
Is it decrease or increases, baby? You're on the right track. If I have less photoelectric absorption, then I did what to my KVP?
You increase it.
Bingo. So manipulating the quality, which is our factor number 4, can also create this image. Now, skeletal bones, we know, are supposed to be photoelectric absorption. They're supposed to be higher brightness, right? We know that air is going to be low brightness. But we start to implement these KVP or manipulating the KVP energies because we want to be able to differentiate between like tissues. Tissues that are going to absorb the X-rays in a similar way. Tissues that are going to absorb the X-rays in a similar way. Tissues that will absorb X-rays in a very similar fashion. What kind of organs would absorb X-rays in a similar fashion in the abdomen?
Liver, the stomach. Stomach and the small intestines. The stomach and the small intestines.
Waiting for some responses.
Maybe the liver, the stomach.
The liver is solid, right? So the liver is solid. It's not hollow. Stomach is pretty hollow unless you put a lot of food into it, right? So you could see, well, maybe that makes sense. If I put some food in it, it'll probably seem solid or give the same appearance as the liver. But what about the liver and the kidneys, Aurora? Would they look somewhat similar? Even though
Yes.
Are semi-hollow. Yeah, I would. What about the liver and the psoas muscles? Would probably give a similar type of appearance. So let's take a look. You studied this section before. You've gone over, you've had your labeling, so you know what you're looking at, correct? Stephanie, what am I pointing at right here? What is this that I'm moving my cursor over?
The muscles,
So one, left or right?
that's going to be the right.
The right is
No,
on
the left.
There you go. Perfect. Good. So we can see this now. All we used, we've set 1 kVp and we've set 1 mass. The tissue is doing everything else, whether it's compact tissue, whether it's air, whether it's soft tissue, or whether it's tissue dense. The energy is being absorbed at different rates. And yes, we know that the primary beam is polyenergetic, meaning it has various energies. If I set 100 keV, I know the topmost photon is going to be 100 keV. Well, what is going to be the likely abundance value? John, what is it likely going to be if I set my KVP to 100? 33. So we have the majority of our photon energy, our primary beam, at 33 keV. And all of this energy is going to interact with bony anatomy, soft tissue, air differently. So we are able to go back and identify parts. What am I pointing at, Jaleisha?
The iliac crest.
Which one? Got
right.
Two. The right one. Perfect. Good. Asias, what am I pointing at?
The diaphragm?
I don't see lungs.
Oh, lung.
Not high enough to see lungs, so I cannot see a diaphragm.
Is that liver?
That is the liver. Look at the quadrant that it's sitting in, and this is the right side. Perfect. Good. Javier, what is this I'm pointing at? It contains air.
Would that be the stomach?
It is the stomach, because we know that the stomach lies in the left upper quadrant, mostly for a stomach patient. And we are going to likely see it hollow or full of air, right? And then we know we have intestinals. We can kind of see, here is our flank stripe. What do we call this little flank stripe or fat stripe? It is the difference between what is soft tissue and what is the peritoneal cavity. What is the peritoneum? I love the peritoneum. I think I've said that a couple of times before. What is the peritoneum? Uh-oh. Do I got to add it on to this exam? Oh, I love getting.
Is it the tissue that covers organs in the stomach?
I love Betty's spirit. I love your spirit, Betty. What did you say?
Is a tissue that covers the organs in the stomach?
Yes, it's the sac. It is the sac that holds the liver and holds the, well, not the kidneys, because kidneys are retroperitoneal, that holds the small intestine, that holds the large intestines, the peritoneum, right? We talked about pneumoperitoneum. What is pneumoperitoneum, Justly?
That's the air.
What kind of air?
The air. So,
is it this air?
That air. It's in the peritoneal cavity, right?
Free air.
Free air in the peritoneal.
Air. Yes, free. Escaped air in the peritoneal cavity. Perfect. Who wants to take a crack at this? What is this that I'm pointing at?
Is that the kidney?
Which one? You got two of them.
Kidney.
Perfect. I like that. I like when people add the lesson right. I do. I look for it. Perfect. Good. Wani, what is this?
The sacrum.
Very much so. Good. We can see transverse processes of the lumbar. We can see spinous processes of the lumbar. We can see the ribs, and we can see some of the thoracic. So there is a lot of tissue that is evident. We are able now to look at all of these different tissues. We focus our eyes, but how did we do that? Because of the brightness levels. So when you go back and you say, oh, wow, I really want to have a better look at the actual colon. I want to go back and I want to have a better look at the actual colon. What did we do? I know that many of you have seen this inside of fluoro. What did we give this patient, or what did we insert to this patient?
Contrast.
Contrast. What kind of contrast?
Is it barium enema?
It is a barium enema. The barium enema or barium contrast is inserted to the patient rectally so that we can illuminate, paint, illuminate the colon. So we can go from this type of image to this type of image. It makes identifying the anatomy easier. However, what is happening right here, Jonan? What kind of effect?
Photoelectric effect.
Good. Photoelectric effect. And then here?
Transmission.
Trick. Well, we got some transmission, and we can see transmission right here. Well, what is happening, and why are we able to see this part of the colon? Well, because barium is so high atomic number that it has the ability to absorb too many electrons. So a lot of X-rays are not penetrating through and are going to be absorbed. So this is why we allow the barium to enter. We allow it to go all the way to the cecum, to the ileocecal valve. And then what do we do after? We drop the bag on the floor so it can drain out. Make sense? So that what we're left with is nice. The mucus lining of the colon is painted with this barium. And it gives us the ability, and air, implementing air, it gives us the ability to inflate the intestines, and now we're able to see the walls of the intestine. So barium is a tool that we use. We love its high atomic number because we are purposely trying to create a photoelectric effect, right? And then we're able to go back and outline each little pocket of haustra along the colon. So, number 2, Joey, what anatomy is that?
Is it the cecum?
It is the cecum, and we can even see number 1. Number 1 looks like what, Marisela? Not the bone. It's what extends off of the cecum.
Is it the appendix?
The what?
The appendix.
Good job. All right, Pamela, number 3. What colon is that?
You say what column?
Colon.
Is it the thing that, sorry, it goes up.
It's ascending, right?
Okay.
It goes. We know that when we have that transit, everything is going to go into the small bowel. Then once it goes into the large bowel, it'll enter the cecum, travel up, ascending colon. Son, what is number 4? Son, what is number 4?
Number 4, let me see, the sigmoid colon? No, that's not sigmoid.
It's a flexure. Name of this flexure. We got 2 of them.
Right
We
flexure.
got one here and one here.
Can I help him?
Go ahead.
So 4 is the hepatic flexure. 6 is the splenic flexure.
Good. Or left colic flexure or right colic flexure. Beautiful. All right, son. You're not the 5.
Transverse colon.
Very good. Stephanie, 7.
It's the ascending colon.
Ascending goes up.
Descending, sorry.
Perfect. Good. All right. Let me see. Ruth, what is number 8? It is the sigmoid. And number 9, we have the rectum. Perfect. So we use contrast to cause photoelectric effects so that we can see. We use air to also cause transmission. And what this basically does, it allows us to separate what our objective is away from other similar type tissues. we can identify all of the parts of this colon here. Unless we started and we're using the air here, it becomes difficult to evaluate, right? Couldn't see a vermiform appendix. Really difficult to see the sigmoid. We know relatively where they lie. Sigmoid lies in the lower left quadrant. We know where they relatively are. However, it's difficult to see. And that's why we utilize contrast. So thank you very much. So, was that interesting? Yes? Okay, so we have more. Perfect. Okay, so let's take a look. Amy, E.
Is it the trachea?
It is the trachea. What gave you that indication?
You can see the shape of it. Oh, that's how I was able to see it.
Okay, and
you
you're
can
able
also
to
see
see
the
the shape
bifurcation.
because it's outlined with.
I'm sorry?
What is that dark appearance? How did you know that was the trachea?
Air.
Thank you. So it has a dark appearance, right? We know that it is going to allow photons to transmit easier. All right, perfect. What is A down here?
Diaphragm?
Got a dark appearance. Cannot be.
Stomach.
The stomach?
It is the stomach. How do we know it's the stomach?
Oh, because of the air.
Oh, good job. Now this is how we're using our brightness levels to determine our anatomy. What is this an outline of, Naomi?
The scapula.
So we have a superimposing scapula over our lungs. Do we see the variations, differences in brightness? Do we see that there is a brightness difference between right here and here? Naomi?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we know that we had more tissue for the energy to pass or to bypass. So we know that this right here, the darker appearance, the energy level that reached the image receptor was higher. However, over here, because of that scapula being in the way, it lost more of its energy. Make sense? Perfect. What is C, Luke?
Is that the heart shadow?
It is the heart shadow. So we know that X-rays were absorbed by looking around the heart. We do see some areas of increased brightness. Thank you, Luke. We do see some areas of increased brightness around the heart. What could that possibly be?
Part of the hilar region?
You see them right here? You see these striations right here? Hilar is going to be more around in the lung field, not around the heart.
Is it the arteries and the veins?
Beautiful. It is the arteries and the veins, the coronary arteries and the coronary veins. But because they add more fluid, more tissue, they are going to seem brighter, indicating more what type of effect?
Is it the photoelectric?
Is it, or are you telling me? Are you asking me?
Telling you.
Thank you. Perfect. Good. All right, Jessley. What is F?
The carina, the bifurcation carina.
It is, but we can see actually the split if you follow the air. And what level does the carina lie at?
T5.
Yes, which is bringing us into cross-sectional. Perfect. Good. G, Jonan.
The hilar region.
It is the hilar region. And if you start to see more increased brightness, that is going to be an indication of more mucus or fluid inside of there, which could eventually lead us to a type of pathology, correct? We've spent time on pathology, pneumonia, bronchitis. We've talked about it. So we know that these different variations indicate an anomaly, right? Yes? And H, John.
Aortic arch.
Perfect. Good. Very thick, muscular vessel. That's why it's called a great vessel. So it is going to absorb X-rays at a different rate than the lung tissue surrounding it. Perfect. So again, here we go. We're able to identify different tissues by the way that the X-ray energies. You probably forgot you thought you were in a PRE class because we've been talking anatomy this whole time, but they go hand in hand. The X-rays interacting with the tissues are going to depict what was lying there. Make sense? So if an X-ray was aiming for this part of the anatomy, but scattered and landed over here, it is going to contribute to non-useful information because it's not indicating what is the energy level. What's happening here?
Some nipple rings are happening here.
There's some nipple rings happening here, and there's something else going on over here. How can we tell that that's happening? How can we tell that we forgot to have him remove those?
There's artifacts because of the photoelectric effect.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And then when we go back and we reveal this, we take it from a latent image and we see it on the computer and it pops up to what is called a manifested image. And we're like, uh-oh. Are you able to remove those? Right? Because they're lying right in the middle of our anatomy. Make sense? So we know exactly how to determine what we're looking at by using the brightness levels. Here's cross-sectional. What kind of image is this?
Axial?
It is axial, and we view axial images how?
From the bottom up?
Inferior,
superior.
I don't know about bottoms up, but inferior to superior, okay? I'll be taking that out of here and saying as well as said bottoms up. No, I didn't. All right, so let's take a look. We got this chest x-ray. We can obviously see that this is a chest x-ray because look at the amount of air. Look at the amount of air. We're looking at it inferior, superiorly. We know that this is the left side. This is the patient's right side. And we're looking at a level. This is why we're not able to see through and through. We're not able to see apex. We're not able to see diaphragm because we're taking a slice. And where did we take this slice from? We took this slice in the relative area around T5, eliminated everything else. With this, we're able to determine that this mass interacted with the photons differently than the surrounding tissue, indicating that there is a pathology. Make sense? This is why it's extremely important that you use the correct type of technical factors for the correct objective so that you're able to identify, not overpower, but identify anatomy, whether it's subtle or whether it's great like this. This is not subtle, right? And so we're looking at the various differences, the anomalies, the abnormalities. Any questions of what we just talked about? No? Okay. So we have different types of, not image receptors. We're talking about the digital world. And in your book, it does cover a small portion of film, a film screen. Not a lot, small portion. Behaviors for getting an image, developing an image from film versus digital, whole different process, okay? But we know what a latent image is an invisible image. It's when the X-rays reach the image receptor. Before you take that cassette, before as the patient is still standing at the Bucky for a flat panel detector or direct radiography before it becomes anything. On the screen, it is going to be an invisible image. It's not until this screen is processed, energies are quantified, that it becomes a manifested image like this. This is a manifested image. You're able to see this on the screen. Make sense? So digital imaging, which is the world we live in, is the most common method to create the radiographic image. Film is not necessarily in play anymore. Some facilities out there, but not so much. So again, the latent image is pretending to be that visible image. Why do I have these rows and columns? So I have rows and columns. This is going to be big for your next section. So when you think about a screen or an image receptor, we're going to have rows and columns of what's going to be able to capture our energy. So the latent image is fully active. It's received energy, so it's going to be energized, but the image is not visible until there's a computer application applied to it, and it's going to give this manifested image or visible image. So the difference between latent and visible, manifest, visible. Your homework. Your homework. On Friday, you guys are going to be talking to me. I'm going to get laryngitis. So with that being said, I need you to go back, get to digital images. I want you to learn. I want you to tell me what is a latent image and the various types of digital detectors that record. I want you to tell me what happens to the X-ray intensities and convert it to digital data. That's huge. I want you to also be able to tell me the display on a monitor and how it can be altered, because that's also huge. You may or may not. I want you to go outside of the chapter. I want you to go outside of the chapter. I want you to go outside of the chapter. Bontrager is also a very good source. And I want you to start covering these 3 sections. I will want you to start covering these 3 sections. You will have it with you on Friday as you present it to me, and then I will have you submit it to me at the end of the class. Make sense? I'll say that one more time. So your homework to also present to me on Friday the digital image receptors. I want you to go back and tell me what is the latent image acquisition. I want you to also tell me what type of digital detectors there are. There's more than one that will record remnant radiation. I want you to also talk to me about computer image processing. What happens to the X-ray intensities that are converted to digital data? And then I also want you to tell me what is the possibilities of altering that manifested image. Okay? Your 2 sources.
Right. Do you want us to
2 sources? I'm sorry, go ahead, Espevi.
Do you want us to write it or type it?
You can type it. It'll be easier for you to submit it. Your 2 sources are going to be your PRE book and your Bontrager book. Got it? Don't go outside of those 2 sources. I want you to stay consistent with your information. All right?
Ms. Can you repeat the computer imaging processes again, please? Which you said you wanted to see.
There's going to be various ways that, depending if you're talking about CR, if you're talking about DR, if you're talking about DR direct or indirect, there's going to be different ways that the X-ray intensities are converted to digital data, especially with CR and DR. So that's what we're talking about. How did we get these energies to be displayed into those colors? Okay? So this is going to take you some time. I hope you don't think you're going to be able to do it 1 hour before class. Okay? So make sure you dive into it. It will be for a grade. Any questions? It will be submitted on after class on Friday. Any questions? Well, all right. You guys are I love the fact that we're just smooth sailing. Okay. Well, you guys have a good one. I'll see you later if you have no questions. Bye.